Hey, what's up, guys? It's Matt from Matt Things, and today I'm going to be giving my review of the book Fantasy Baseball for Smart People by Jonathan Bales. The point of this book is to make you a better daily fantasy baseball player on sites such as DraftKings and FanDuel. And while this book does focus on baseball, a lot of the advice is universal and will apply to almost any daily fantasy sports, because a lot of the book is just general theory on how to play daily fantasy sports, whether it's baseball or football or another sport. To give you some background about my experience playing daily fantasy sports, I've been a pretty casual player of both daily fantasy baseball and daily fantasy football for a long time. I never really bet any large amounts of money, just usually a couple bucks here and there. And for the most part, I was pretty bad. I've probably lost 20 or 30 bucks in my lifetime. It was always just a leisure and entertainment thing to me, but I was always interested about gaining some theory and getting better at it. Before reading this book, I had read a lot of blogs or a lot of YouTube videos about how to play daily fantasy sports. However, I have to say this book really revolutionized my thinking about it and actually gave me some solid theory and facts to start my new playing, my new skill set with daily fantasy sports, and it definitely has made me a better player. So I want to talk about in this review what parts of the book really gave me some benefit and helped change my thinking. And there's really two main useful parts of the book. The first one is just general fantasy sports theory, and the second one is a lot of hard facts he gives specifically for daily fantasy baseball. To start off with the theory, this in my opinion is by far the most important part of this book, because I think myself, like many other people, are stuck in a mindset that isn't the correct mindset to play daily fantasy sports. The issue is that I had always looked on which players I should choose from a value perspective. I would see, okay, this pitcher or this hitter costs X amount of money, and I think he'll score X amount of points. And that makes sense. You think you want to maximize points to win games. However, Jonathan Bales with his book really changed my mindset on how to play daily fantasy sports, and that he made me realize it's much more about upside than value. Let me explain with an analogy he uses in the book. If, let's say, you need 200 points, or your goal is to get 200 points in a daily fantasy sports game, and you have two lineups you can choose. Let's say somehow magically you knew the probabilities of those lineups reaching 200 points. One of them has a 5% chance of reaching 200 points, while another one only has 3%. You would obviously think, oh, I want to go with the 5% option. However, what he shows us is that's not always the best bet. Because if you play what's called scratch, or what the general consensus is with the 5% option, even if you get to 200 points, the chances are that many other people will get to 200 points as well, since you're picking popular players. However, if you play the 3% approach, and it's players that most people are sleeping on or don't think are good, if you do get to the 200 points, the chances are you might win the tournament because other people aren't choosing those players. He really shows that the way you should play fantasy sports is trying to increase your upside, or the chance of you winning, or getting to more points than other people, versus just trying to maximize value. This leads to something he calls anti-fragility, in which you want to do things that when what people expect happens doesn't happen, you benefit. You want to target that pitcher maybe people don't think will be doing good, or make high risk, high reward plays. This newfound mentality really revolutionized my playing. This leads me to the second part of the book, which is a hard facts part of the book. And this part really helped change my mind on which data is useful. Because for data in daily fantasy sports to be useful, it has to meet two criteria which I usually didn't consider. First, it needs to not be factored into the player's price points. For example, before I read this book, I used to look at a lot of the really obvious data. For example, I'd look at a hitter's batting average, or I'd look at a pitcher's ERA. And while this data gives a lot of information about how good the player is in general, it doesn't really help you in daily fantasy sports, because since these are such obvious statistics, sites such as FanDuel and DraftKings are already factoring these statistics into the player's price points. So it really doesn't help you with upside or value to look at these statistics, considering everyone's already considering them. Also, you want to consider statistics that maybe are a little bit more obscure, that other people aren't looking at, so you can get that upside. If you find a statistic that significantly affects value for the player that other people aren't looking at, not only will it give you value, but it'll also give you upside, because you'll be able to see which players are valuable that other people aren't realizing are valuable since they're not looking at their statistics. Everyone knows that top ace pitcher is great, or that big slugger is a great batter, but this book really shows you which data is important and what data you should look at to actually maximize your value and upside when choosing daily fantasy sports players. And it's really nice because this book actually gives you a lot of actionable data, which is something I don't usually get. When I've looked at blogs or YouTube videos, I get a lot of general advice about how to play daily fantasy sports, but this book was the first resource I've really ever had where I've had hard data to know which players are going to give me more value and upside. For example, one thing that Jonathan Bales talks a lot about is stadiums and the benefit of batters playing at certain stadiums versus other stadiums. And he gives a lot of hard data using what he calls as plus minus, which basically compares how much those players have historically scored at, for example, in this case, different stadiums compared to what you'd expect at their price points. And he gives a lot of different data points. For example, with the stadium ones, he gives just the raw plus minus data points for each stadium. The plus minus data points for each stadium when you remove the bias that different pitchers have, when you remove how good the pitchers were at each stadium, and also the plus minus at each stadium when each stadium was at ideal weather conditions. And so this actionable data is not only a great day-to-day resource and tool, but also reading through this hard facts section will help train your mind at what data is good and which data you should be using when making informed decisions about daily fantasy sports. So in conclusion, I really like this book and would definitely recommend it if you play daily fantasy sports and baseball. I really like that there was a lot of actionable data within the book, and whenever he makes a point or an argument, he almost always backs it up by statistics, so he's not just basically spitballing his opinions. Also, all the actionable data and theory really helped make me a better player, and I've seen noticeable improvement. I've started losing less, I've been getting consistently higher scores, and I've had my highest finish ever since reading the book, and I really think it's helped me make a better player. Don't get me wrong, I'm not quitting my day job, and making this book will not make you quit your day job either. But it really makes the game more enjoyable to play, at least for me, because it went from just being random betting to me actually realizing that daily fantasy sports are a puzzle that I'm always trying to solve. I guess now I'll talk about some cons I have about the book. One of them is that the author of this book also runs a site called Fantasy Labs, which seems like a really cool data site for daily fantasy sports. The issue is it's really expensive, and he really advertises for the book a lot in this site because he uses a lot of the site's tools to help prove his points. And so while it wasn't really all that obtrusive, and you definitely don't feel like, oh, I need to get this site now, it definitely makes you want to get this site, and it's honestly so expensive that casual players aren't going to be able to afford it. I think it's something like $30 a month. Also, there's some filler in the book as well. While it's a really fun read, sometimes it comes at the cost of him just kind of, making jokes or using a lot of filler and stuff that isn't actual valuable content. So some of it is you having to wade through some of the jokes and analogies he's making to get to the hard and actionable data. But he does a good job with this because he does a bolded conclusion at the end of each section where if you do want to just skim the book, then you can kind of read through it. And as someone who's just a hobbyist like me, I honestly kind of enjoyed some of the jokes and conjecture he threw in there. So I really think that this is a good book, and if you like daily fantasy sports, I highly suggest that you check it out. But I'd like to hear your guys' opinion about the book. Have you read it? Are you a daily fantasy sports player? What are your opinions about the theory and the best way to play daily fantasy sports? If you like this video, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up and you subscribing to my channel. I don't always make daily fantasy sports content, even though if this video gets a lot of traction, I'll make some more of it, and also I just give my opinion on lots of other things. But I guess thanks for watching, and have a good one, guys. Bye.